What's the most wholesome experience you've had with a stranger? When I was 18, I had a friend in the hospital with brain cancer. His time was limited. I visited him when I could. He was kind of hippie alternative punk. I wore a leather jacket and had long hair. I walked to his room. A nurse saw me. Without saying a word, she walked to me and gave me a long comforting hug. That's how I knew he passed. I'm a wheelchair user. At a baseball game, a little girl came running up to me and climbed onto my lap. Her mom was apologetic, but I told her it was fine, no worries. Looking at the girl's face, I could tell she had some kind of developmental disability. Mom explained to me that the little girl's grandfather used a wheelchair and she missed him. I rolled around a little to give her a ride. She giggled and had a good time, then she climbed off and went back to her mom. What is a green flag you've experienced on a first date that made you want to have a second date? She came to my door and my puppy got excited. Without skipping a beat, she scooped up the dog and asked where the three of us were going. That was 19 years ago. Puppy is gone, but we've stuck together through hell and back. First date, she was driving us to a spot to go hiking, about an hour's drive. We're talking and talking, but every once in a while we wouldn't be talking, and it just felt so comfortable and not awkward being silent together. The date was supposed to just be getting a drink or two. We stayed until the place was closing down, and even then the date wasn't over. We watched Donnie Darko and he made us cookies. We've been together for almost 10 years and married for 5. He took me out for coffee in a place that he made me choose. When I got there, he was already waiting, and the way his eyes shined when he saw me was really adorable. We ordered and played chess. His hand was shaking. It's been a year and counting. I asked if she wanted to go to McDonald's and split some fries because that's all I could afford at the time. She said sure. We talked a long time and split a large fries, and she was so chill about it. She wanted to be with me. Anywhere would have been okay. I knew if she was willing to go. Guys, what's the craziest thing that's happened in the boys' locker room that most girls wouldn't understand? Someone in my older brother's class stuck a matchbook on my brother's back right above his belt and lit it on fire as a prank. I guess, my brother got a pretty serious burn at the base of his back about the size of an apple. He didn't tell anyone about it because he wasn't a snitch, but as he was getting ready for practice after school in the locker room, his coach saw it and assumed my brother was being abused. And my brother not admitting how it happened made everyone at the school assume the worst. My parents got called in, and when the teachers threatened to call the police on my dad, my brother finally told them what happened. The kid who did it was going to get expelled for, setting someone on fire. But my dad was an education is the most important thing in the world kind of guy and went to bat for the kid. I think the kid ended up with 3 years of detention, but he did get to stay in the school.
What's your most wholesome secret? I secretly dropped pennies for many years. My uncle used to bend down and pick up every penny he came across, which was maddening to my aunt, who was worried the neighbors would see him and assume they were poor, needing every penny they could find. They used to tease each other about it. My uncle got cancer and passed away after a very long struggle. After the funeral, we were walking to the car and my aunt saw a penny and said, "Oh, he is thinking of me. He left this penny for me today." So whenever I'm around my aunt, I purposely drop pennies on the ground for her to find. I haven't been caught yet, and I hope I never do. When I was a kid, I used to always twist the quarter machines on the way into stores just in case. Got lucky a couple of times and a few free toys. Now that I'm grown, if I'm leaving a store with them, I like to drop change into them if I have it and leave them half twisted.
How did you find out someone had a crush on you? She called me and asked why I had never asked her out on a date. She knew I was interested because I had told some friends that I was, and they had told her. The reason I hadn't is because her brother and I were friends before I met her. When she called, I told her I'd be thrilled to take her out, but I wanted to make sure it was cool with her brother first. He was cool with it, and we've been together 18 years now. Dating a friend's sister could have turned out bad though. I was pretty sure my friend's little sister had a crush on me when she started following me around like a lost puppy. Then she randomly started calling me by my first and middle name. Then she found out my birthday from someone and started telling me our age difference. It was kind of cute until she decided she should tell her friends that we were dating. We were not dating. I had a nice conversation with her, letting her know that her crush was flattering, but she was way too young for me and that she needed to stop telling people that we were dating since it was not true and could get me in a lot of trouble. In true typical teenager logic, she said that her parents wouldn't have a problem with it and I could date her if I wanted to. I talked to her at an ice cream shop. She was working behind the counter. First time meeting her and thought she was way out of my league. Had to be the prettiest girl I've ever seen. Red hair and blue eyes. No one else was there and she was recommending different things. got my ice cream, and left. I noticed her smiling a lot at me, which I was never used to. I've never thought myself to be attractive, and I didn't date growing up. Came back a few days later and just decided to ask her out randomly to my friend's party. She actually gave me her number and we met up before the party at the park. Ended up getting dinner and going to the movies after. It was a very long first date, but we didn't seem to want it to end. 9 years later, we are married and our baby just turned 1 year old. You never know till you ask. I used to work in a call center which had those old high-walled cubicles in which you could isolate yourself if you lean forward enough and not see anything around you. One day I am on a call and I am super focused, leaning forward, staring at my screen. You get the picture. Now at the time I had really long hair, waist-lengthish, so I was pretty used to it getting caught in stuff. As I am chatting away, I feel as though my hair is being tugged very lightly. No biggie, it happens often, and because of the walls of my cubicle, I can't really see anything in my peripherals. After a while, the sensation grows and starts to become distracting, so I glance over my shoulder. And what do I see? My good friend and co-worker, or so I thought, sniffing, kissing a lock of my hair. I was so stunned I couldn't even react. This mofo was in full weeb mode. It was exactly like something you'd see in an anime. I don't know how to explain this more accurately. Long story short, he confessed during lunch break. I rejected him. I still feel icky remembering this. I was due in a couple weeks to move halfway across the country for my job, so I was hanging out with a local friend to say goodbye. That night I admitted I would have asked her out if I wasn't moving so far away. There was a moment of silence and she responded with, "Yeah, I probably would have said yes, you're quite the catch." Later that night we're lying on her bed watching anime. She gets up to use the bathroom, so I stretch my arms out. She comes back, sees me stretched out, says "ooh an arm," and cuddles right up to me. We're dating now. We had a lockdown drill and at the time I was in Spanish with one of her best friends. So she, very carefully and deliberately, crawls over to me from the other side of the room. She's 15, 6'2", and just army crawling her way across the room towards me. Literally everyone in the class, including the teacher, is just staring at this girl. Let's call her Maria. I'm sure if the teacher had a second to prepare, she would have told Maria not to do this. But, again, this is a big girl just army crawling her way across the floor. No one woke up and thought this would be what they would see that day. So, she gets across the room and just sits up next to me and greets me. She makes small talk, which is normal because we're kinda friends because we've hung out in groups before outside of school and we're also part of an after-school thing. So far, the army crawling is the only abnormal thing to happen here. Suddenly, she asks me, "So, is there anyone you like?" And at the time, I did kind of like this one girl that we'll call Elizabeth, but she's part of the group and the after-school thing and her best friend, and we're all about 15 to 16, so I didn't want to say her name, so I just said yeah. "Is it Elizabeth? You should also her out." But what if she won't? Maria had a very serious look on her face and being like half her size. I was briefly scared for my safety because she also said this with a lot of authority. As it turns out, Elizabeth had a crush on me for weeks and just constantly talked about me to her friends, who'd repeatedly tell her to just ask me out, but that she was too scared to make the first move and they were all sick and tired of hearing about me. So, yeah, that's how I found out that Elizabeth had a crush on me. Asked her a few days later because I was too scared to ask her out that same day or any of the other days I saw her, and we dated for the next 10 months or so. She was actually my first real girlfriend and is still one of my longest relationships to date.